So you've just finished the main campaign of Shadow of War, and now you have no idea what you're supposed to do next. Well, luckily this game has plenty of replayability, and the end game is where the majority of the things to do are. Completing the main story means you have access to Talion's full skill set. Being able to reanimate dead orcs and have edgy, cool looking Batman armor is the best part of the game. I'm going to talk about some other things you can do now that you've got no missions. You want to address is the Shadow Wars. Although this is kind of technically part of the main story, it's kind of added on the end. But finish them, do your little fortress captures and defenses, and that technically ends the story completely because you get the little final cutscene. Yeah, and then when you're done with them, then you're truly done with the missions, and then it's just sort of whatever you fancy doing next, you know? But we're going to talk about that. Throughout the course of the campaign missions, you're going to be like a fairly low level, unless you're grinding a lot between each of the missions. But for the majority of people, you're probably finishing the campaign at about like level 30, 40-ish, I think, if I remember rightly. But then end game, you can like grind to get to level 80, which is pretty tough. You have to put a lot of hours in to get to there. But yeah, now you can start getting some really cool orcs, because obviously the higher level they are, the more stuff and crazy shit they can do. So now's when the Nemesis system really kind of takes off and kind of carries the narrative for the rest of the time you play the game. In terms of actually finding these really cool orcs, obviously you want to level up, and the best way to be getting XP at end game is doing vendetta missions. Obviously where an orc kills you and you got to go get revenge basically, and online vendetta missions are also really good for XP. So I recommend grinding some of them bad boys to get you a decent level. Obviously the higher level you are, the better orcs you're going to be finding, because they can only spawn like within a certain range of your own level as a character. So once you've got yourself to a decent level, you know, you're comfortable, you don't have to get to max level, but I'd say around 60 to, let's say 50 to 60, you're looking at some big juicy boy orcs. So that's where you're going to be looking. And you're going to start to see in the end game a lot more legendary and epic boys popping up, and they're the ones you want to get your hands on. There's three main ways that I use myself to try and find the best orcs late game. I would go with pit fights, you know, grind the pit fights, and it doesn't really matter who you put in, because you can always just recruit the enemy. So grind like champion pit fights and you might find some really decent orcs in there. The next way is online conquests. Obviously, if people have been putting orcs as their war chiefs and overlords, they're probably going to be fairly decent, especially like as you rank up in online conquests, you're going to be finding higher defense rated fortresses, and they're going to have big, strong boy orcs that you can yoink from other people's fortresses. And finally, it's kind of, well, no, it is well known, but like maybe less people do it, but I like to just get killed by random grunts, especially when your character's high level, because the grunts will just instantly level up to like level 60 or whatever you are, and some of them can just be absolute badasses for no reason. Like I had one the other day that just instantly became legendary and just started just destroying the cheeks of anyone who came near him, basically. A really cool thing to start doing late game as well, after you finish the main story quests, is you unlock worse than death shaming, which can be really strong if you just pick one orc that has like a decent starting like set of skills and just constantly shame him until he's basically nothing. And then sometimes, if you're really lucky, you can get deranged, which kind of weakens them, but it makes them funnier. But then if they turn to a maniac, then they can become really OP. Oh! Yes! First time! Oh my god, became level 83. I've never done that before. First time, I say. First time on that guy. 8th time today. So just hunting maniacs. It can take some time though, like you have to grind a few hours. Just shaming orcs, and the other day I had like absolute shit luck where my maniacs would just instantly get clapped by my bodyguards, which was a bit sad because I didn't level them up enough. But yeah, maniacs are cool to try and find, and they're like the strongest orc really. Aside from like trying to find and recruit all like the best orcs you can possibly find, you can also spend a bit of time trying to collect like legendary gear sets, which can give you like some pretty insane perks on some of them, and they also look drippy as fuck, especially after you finish the campaign. Like the ring wraith gear is sick, and also there's like the normal collectibles, which are not really my thing. I don't really like to spend time finding collectibles because I'm not really a perfectionist, but if that's your kind of thing, there are like loads of collectibles to find. in Shadow of War, so I'd recommend going around and having a little look-see in some secret corners and stuff. You might find some interesting stuff. There's like the Shelob memories and the Keller Brimbor flashbacks and all that stuff, which is all fun to do. Now, after a few hours of grinding, like trying to find orcs and training them up and finding gear and trying to get collectibles, taking outposts, taking fortresses, even like online and doing pit fights and stuff, you might find yourself a bit bored. You know, it can happen. It's a great game, but you might get bored of it. There is the DLCs if you have the, is it the definitive edition, I think. But the DLCs are definitely worth it. So if you have played the main game and you've got a million hours in it, there's no reason you shouldn't have played the DLCs. They are pretty sick. They're different to the main story. Like, you're not Talion, you can't dominate orcs and all that stuff, but they are definitely worth a play. Not as good as the main story, but definitely worth a play. Alright, I think that about wraps it up. There's a bit of a random, you can probably tell, unscripted video. I just thought I'd go over some bits that I was thinking about, because I just recently finished like another playthrough of it, and I was like, damn, there's a lot of stuff to do after you finish the campaign. Kind of like the whole game is after the campaign, it feels like. It's weird. But it's a fun game, and you can definitely spend a long time playing it long after the campaign has been fully completed. Yeah, cheers for watching, appreciate you, and like the video if you're a cool dude, and sub if you're even cooler than that. See you later, boys.